I woke up Tuesday morning and immediately I started having a great day. And if you live in New York or you're a fan of a New York sports team, you should know that whatever disagreements we may have, whatever our fandom is, we can all come together at the expense of any team from Boston, Massachusetts. And on Tuesday morning, news dropped that the Boston Celtics are having a little internal drama. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to hit the music real quick and we're just going to take a moment to enjoy this little bit of drama. Oh man, that this is great. I am having greatest time right now. If I had the time, I would have just put on the 10-hour loop of the crab rave, but unfortunately, that's not something that I have the luxury of doing. Anyway, let's go ahead. We got the jokes out of the way and dive into what's going on with this story because it seemingly has come out of nowhere. Now, as I mentioned beforehand, the Boston Celtics are having a little bit of internal strife to begin the season. So the Celtics are 2 and 5 at the time of this recording. As I predicted, heading into the season, they would fall off. I'm not surprised that they're off to such a struggle this season, even though Jayson Tatum is playing kind of well. Jaylen Brown has been better to begin the season. I'm just going to go ahead and open up the article. Originally, I had gotten quotes from Twitter, but now I'm on Forbes, and this is courtesy of Chris Grenham? Grenham? I think that's how you pronounce it. Chris, I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing your name, but this has been something that multiple reporters have talked about. The article begins. Things were going well for the Boston Celtics on Monday night at TD Garden. They held a comfortable 17-point lead over the Chicago Bulls with 30 seconds left in the third quarter, but it all came crashing down in a catastrophic fourth quarter collapse. Coming off two straight losses to the Washington Wizards, this felt like an important early season matchup for the Celtics, and early on, they treated it as such. Boston stepped up to the plate. Oh my god, fucking jumped the pink. Boston stepped up to the plate, ball movement, good pace, and an emphasis on spacing. They were finding success in ways they hadn't over the last few games, and it was reassuring to see them respond to some early season adversity. And then it wasn't. As we know, and as the author just mentioned, the Celtics were coming off two back to back losses to the Washington Wizards, one of which I think went into double overtime, or I can't remember if that was the game against the Bulls. But Boston has already played three overtime games in seven contests, adding up to five extra periods and about 25 extra minutes of playing time. Well, obviously, not all of that has been accumulated by the players, but some guys are already accumulating unnecessary minutes. The fourth quarter saw a little ball movement when Chicago tightened up defensively. Boston turned toward forced isolation, specifically for Jayson Tatum, a scenario he has struggled in through his first six games. When the offense hit an extended roadblock, it leaked over to the defensive end where the Celtics put up a little fight. The Bulls outscored Boston 39 to 11 in the final frame, shooting 81% from the floor. The Celtics did not have a single defensive rebound over the 12-minute span. It was about as ugly a loss can get in a team's first 10 games. That is horrifying. As a Brooklyn Nets fan, as someone who has seen piddling rebounding performances, I don't think I've ever seen anything as bad as that. To go an entire quarter without one defensive rebound, it's it's literally insane. It's insane. There's no other way to describe it. To not get one rebound, I get getting blasted, like giving up 39 points or whatever it was even allowing 80% from the field, I can see, especially if you're just giving guys easy looks around the basket, or if, they just get hot and they make a bunch of threes. But after this game, Marcus Smart went on a little bit of well, not a little bit. He went on a rant addressing some of his teammates' selfishness. He says, quote, "I would just like to play basketball. Every team knows we're trying to go to Jayson and Jaylen, and every team is programmed and studied to stop Jayson and Jaylen. I think everybody's scouting report is to make those guys try to pass the ball. They don't want to pass the ball, and that's something they're going to learn." Smart then went on to note how Boston's two pillars need to take a step forward in their creation for both themselves and their teammates. Quote, "They're still learning and we're proud of the progress they're making, but they're going to have to make another step and find ways to not only create for themselves, but create for others on this team to open up the court for them later in the game where they don't always have to take those tough shots or take tough matchups when they do get the one-on-one or see a trap." Just reading that, it's something that we've been asking them to do, and they're learning. We got to continue to help those guys do that and to help our team. Oh my God, he's still going. There's only so much I can do without the ball in my hands. I'm just standing in the corner. We're running plays for our best players. Every team knows that. They do a good job of shutting that down. We can't allow that. When they shut that down, we can't keep trying to go to those guys. We got to abort that and find another way to give them the ball in the spots where they need the ball. Like I said, for me, I can only do so much just standing there in the corner or when I come up and give the ball away. I do everything I can on the other end to try to combat that. I try to talk, I try to make plays, get those guys the ball when they need it, where they want it. Smart is 100% correct in these comments. And from what I've seen on the internet, this is really the case of right message, wrong guy. Because Marcus Smart is having a horrific offensive campaign. I think he's averaging like 8 points on 30% shooting from the floor. I know it's definitely below 40, but it's one of the worst offensive campaigns he's had since coming into the league. And this is a guy who's not known for his scoring prowess. He set a career high last year, I think, at around 13 points. He did show really respectable percentages from three, like something that the Celtics needed desperately more than anything else. But the Celtics are running into a problem that I don't think anybody, well, I'm sure people foresaw this, but I don't think they imagined it would be such an issue. With Kyrie gone, with Kemba gone, you don't have a legitimate point guard out there facilitating the offense. Jayson Tatum, as great of a scorer as he is not the type of forward who's versatile enough to be the main facilitator for this team. The same thing is true with Jaylen Brown. As it stands, Marcus Smart really is the de facto point guard whenever he's out on the floor. And someone who is a relatively good passer, as Marcus Smart is, should be able to say things like this, because ultimately the Celtics' reluctance to pass, and it's not even necessarily that they're reluctant to pass, because they're actually passing at around a similar rate compared to last season. I think they might actually be better. I checked this morning and it was like they're averaging around 290 passes made per game, which was a couple more than the previous season. But that's just passing. That doesn't necessarily translate to offense because they don't have really high assist numbers. I think they're at about 23 a game, which is a little bit less than what they did last year. But even then, this team was not a particularly pass heavy offense or an offense that generated a copious amount of assists, like the kind of passes that lead directly to field goals. Even then, even back last year, a lot of it was okay, give Jayson the ball and see what happens. And to Jayson Tatum's credit, he made a shitload of incredible shots last season, but this has not been the case. It's not been the case to begin this campaign. He's at like 25 points, shooting about 40% from the field. Defenses have caught up to the Boston Celtics. Eventually, defenses catch up to all the great players, and it falls on that player and also the player, also the team and everyone around the player, but the player has to be receptive to changing his play style. Jayson Tatum has to be receptive to the Celtics running the type of offense that they ran when he was younger and even before he got there, a Brad Stevens type offense. Lots of movement, a lot of set plays, just passing the ball around until you find the best shot possible. And right now, they're not doing that. As Marcus Smart alluded to earlier, Jayson and Jaylen Brown in particular, and it's not just them, but since they are the two highest usage guys on the team, they're the primary shot creators, it all goes back to them. And according to Synergy, on a percentage basis, taking more isolations than last year. They're about 10% this season compared to 8% last season. 2%, especially 8 to 10, is not that big, but those compound over the season. Like first it's 2 plays, then it's 4 plays, and then it's 8, and then it's 16. It adds up, and those are more and more missed opportunities that the Celtics aren't capitalizing on. Ultimately, the way that you fix this is by going out around the trade deadline and shopping around. That's their biggest issue right now, is that Boston's lack of a point guard is more detrimental than I think anyone predicted. I don't know how many people expected the Celtics to get off to such a bad start, like this bad, to be 2-5, 7 games in, with really just not having left a good impression on a lot of people. Like even their first game against the Knicks, we knew that the Knicks were going to be a competitive team, but I'm also not so sure that people thought they'd be able to hang with the Celtics or at least force double overtime against the Celtics. Like that right away was a wake up call. And considering Jaylen Brown had just gotten out of COVID protocol, his legs weren't underneath him, his stamina wasn't up, like that, you could easily just write off that loss. And then again, you don't want to overreact because it is just the first game of the season. But as time goes on, it's going to get worse and worse for the Boston Celtics. Also, additionally, there are the teams that they're going up against aren't even fully locked in yet. The Knicks team that they played on opening night is worse than the Knicks team that they're going to go up against whenever the fuck they play next. And even the Knicks now, after 7 games or 6 games or whatever, have made serious leaps and bounds. Same thing with the Washington Wizards, the Bulls. I know the Bulls are the top team in the East, or at least tied to be the top team in the East. They're only going to get better. And keep in mind, they're playing with Zach LaVine, who has a torn ligament in his thumb or something like that. He has a hand injury that is hampering him, even though he might not look like it. They don't have Patrick Williams right now, who's going to be out for the next couple of months with an injury of his own. Come December, January, February, the Celtics can easily get stomped on nightly because, again, the East is way more competitive than it's been in previous seasons. Look at teams like Washington. The Wizards are way better than anyone could have predicted. The Charlotte Hornets, the Indiana Pacers, and of course, you have Brooklyn, you have Milwaukee, both of those teams who are still trying to get their footing underneath them. They're not at their peak yet. And then Atlanta. What's another? I think I said Miami already, but if I didn't, Miami. Things could get potentially disastrous for the Boston Celtics. The only way that they're going to mitigate it is by adding someone who can play point guard for them and someone who can run an offense and initiate offense and try to get shots for Jayson Tatum. Not just like get shots, but get easy shots for Jayson Tatum and Jaylen Brown. Because even though Jayson Tatum is damn near averaging 26 points a night, what good is it if you're shooting 39.5% from the floor? It's going to take you 24 shots to get that, and you're not getting to the free throw line at the same rate because of how the league is adjusting how they call fouls. It's going to be very interesting to see how Boston comes back from this. Uh, I don't know. I want to refrain from not jumping to conclusions because again, I know that I have a distaste for the Boston Celtics just, being from New York, but I hate making such bold claims after 7 games. But the thing is, Boston has shown minimal redeeming qualities to start the season. Granted, I could be missing it because I'm not following the Boston Celtics as closely as I am the Nets, for example. But just reading that one little blurb about their fourth quarter collapse, watching them play the Knicks on opening night, seeing them get dumpstered by the Wizards in back-to-back games. It's not looking good, man. I'm looking under Chris's tweet, and as I mentioned, right message, wrong person. Marcus Smart shooting 25%. I don't know if Marcus Smart is talking about passing to him necessarily, but Al Horford, Josh Richardson. I know Josh Richardson isn't having the season that, many projected him to have, but he's shooting a respectable percentage from three. I think the last time I checked, he was around 37% or so. And just even having that type of player on offense can unclog so much for your team. But ultimately, I don't know what's going to happen with the Boston Celtics because it just seems like they're stacking up all these negative traits. You have Marcus Smart already airing out. I don't even want to say airing out dirty laundry, but talking about problems 7 games into the season that maybe you'd want to keep in the locker room. But then again, maybe going public with it is his way of being like, listen, I don't give a fuck if people know what's going on. Like, you guys need to pass the ball. Maybe not to me, but to somebody else because it's not happening right now. They're not playing at the level that they should be. I know I was one who was, didn't expect the Celtics to be that good this year, but did I expect them to be this bad? No, I didn't. So I don't see much changing unless they go out and find anybody to play point guard for them. Fuck, even if they wanted to bring Isaiah Thomas back, I mean, that's better than their current situation.